I'm not sure if he's coming or not. Oh, she's.
Well, nice to see you.
All right, potatoes.
She was down south. She's in St. Louis shooting. And then
So do you want to set extra 90 in?
she,
Are we ready?
We'll put this on first, and then we'll be ready.
Okay.
You're ready. This is a regular meeting and public hearing being held at the Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream on January 14th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in the William F. Cook Jr. Commission Chambers of the Town Hall, 100 C Road, Gulfstream, Florida.
Thank you very much, Dave. Let's call the meeting to order. Please rise and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you call the roll, please, Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White. Here. Commissioner Orthwein. Here. Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Also present are the town manager, Gregory Dunham, assistant town attorney, Edward Nazaro, police chief, Ed Allen, and myself.
Thank you very much. We've been presented with the minutes from our last meeting of December 10th. Are there any corrections, additions, comments? Nope. Now is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the December 10th, 2021 commission meeting.
second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein. Mayor Morgan.
Yes. I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda, so let's move on to our announcement. The next public meeting for the commission is February 11th at 9 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Public comment, anyone wish to speak? If not, let's move to Chief Allen. We have a new officer in town.
I'd like to introduce our latest officer who just joined us this past week. Come on the front. Officer Young from North Palm Beach.
Yes, sir.
Been about 15 years experience in North Palm Beach and experienced a couple other places as well. And he's well qualified and we're glad to have him.
I just met him a few minutes ago, was impressed, and want to welcome you to the town of Gulfstream. I think you'll enjoy it here. We have a great relationship with our police department and they with us. And so I think you'll fit right in.
Thank you.
So welcome very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a report from the town manager on the underground.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor. Okay, so I'm going to tell you where we are today, and then I've got two comments that I'd like to make about it. So right now, their crews are working on 12 cutovers to complete the condos from C Road to the Little Club. After those are completed, they will drop the aerial node that is south of Little Club Drive to the underground location. And after that's completed, then they can finish their wreck out. They have now completed the wreck out of the core. And so that is done. So two things. I've reached out to the town of Palm Beach, who, as you know, has an undergrounding project going on, to see people that they may have contacted for problems that have occurred during their construction. And as it turned out, they were routed to the same people we were. So I'm reading from a message from their external affairs office from Comcast. That was for the update. So we've reached out to the same, or we've been routed to the same people that the town of Palm Beach have been told to contact. What that means, I don't know. It's kind of what I would call the suits at the regional office of Comcast. The second thing that I'd like to say is that contacted FP&L, and their standard operating procedure is not to begin to take down poles until all of the other services are done. But I've suggested to Mr. Robert Weiss that perhaps they could start taking down poles in the core area before they're, if they can mobilize to start, even before they're done. And he said he would talk to their construction people, and sounded fairly positive about that. Now, it may work out that by the time they're done up here would be about the same time they're ready to start taking the poles down. Now, the subcontractor, well, okay, so since the last meeting, Comcast had a moratorium of 2 weeks of not shutting people down during the holidays. And so that contributed to the timing on this. I truly think the subcontractor that's doing this work is having trouble getting people to work. And so I think that's happening in all kinds of businesses, but.
We're inching toward the finish.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And so.
Wires are down in the core, they've got to wrap up here on County
Right.
Road.
Right, and so that's why I'm working with FP&L to make sure that they're ready to go when they're done. So literally, I mean, if they could come out here and do the subcontractor with crews that actually come to work, I think they could probably do all this in like a week. But the problem is getting people, apparently with the subcontractor coming into work. So anyway, that's where we're at.
Thank you. Let's move on to an update on the leaf blower situation.
Okay, so the commission had asked the staff to reach out to Place Soleil and to Mr. Roach and the Civic Association to get some idea of what the community felt about this transition. And Mrs. White reported back on the results from Place Soleil. It was basically 50-50. I think really the biggest response was no response from Place Soleil, and so there wasn't a lot of interest in it. But the numbers that Mr. Roach gave me most recently, they did have a significant amount of responses. And they ended up being around 58 to 60 people that responded positively about the change, and around 20 people that either had no interest or were against it. So those are the numbers from our community. If the commission feels like that shows that there is an interest for the town to do that, we just take your direction and begin to work on the transition. What I would recommend is that if we do this, is that we give like at least a 6-month notice to these companies that typically work in town, and we know who they are, so we could reach out to them. And so the timing of this would be sometime in, well, maybe in the summer or early fall, that the transition would happen.
All right, so we need to have a consensus from the commission as to whether we want to move forward with an ordinance change or not. So we'll put it up to discussion.
I don't know.
I'm
in the I don't know phase because they're loud, no matter if you have, they're loud, they're all loud.
Both of them are loud.
But the only thing I would say, if we're really going to go at it, instead of 6 months, maybe give them a year. I don't want to
We could
cause
do that.
burden
Absolutely.
on small businesses, because it is going to be a burden.
That's
I mean,
right.
they're going to pass on the cost to us, but they're still going
Right.
to have to transition and come up with the capital.
Right. Well,
So I just, that's the only thing. I would
and,
give them a little longer to transition.
and some of the cities that I've talked to that have done the transition did give their contractors a year to do that.
What is the life expectancy of these blowers? I mean,
It would be the batteries.
No, he was talking about the existing ones that are coming offline.
Oh, The gas powered one?
Yeah,
I
And I wouldn't know.
I could, I
Yeah, I
wouldn't
would
know. I could ask Anthony. He has a business.
there you go.
Yeah, so.
I don't know. That's my only concern is I don't want to create undue hardship on anybody. Even if they replace their gas blowers with electric,
Right.
unless they have to replace them. I don't know. That's just a thought.
Do any of the towns from, say, North Palm Beach down to Boca, Pompano, the area where the companies that service us probably service other neighborhoods. Do those any of those towns?
Palm Beach certainly does.
Palm
And I'm not sure about Ocean Ridge.
I don't think so.
You haven't met,
I don't think that one's come up yet.
and Manalapan, they have not transitioned. I'm not sure about Highland Beach. I'm sure that Delray, Boynton have not done that. I'm not sure about Boca though. Boca, if of those three communities, Boca would be the one to do it. I mean,
I'm just wondering if the companies that service our town already have the electric flow. That's kind of where I'm going with. I don't know how, not quite sure how local our landscaping companies are. Do they get up into Palm Beach and down to Boca, or are they more focused on this area?
I mean, I could take a month to delve into
Why don't we
that.
do that? There's no rush on this. Let's move this forward a month and
Okay.
let's check with some of
And
the
I
local
think,
companies.
yeah, I think Anthony can help out in that regard
Yeah, have them-
because he knows all of these people.
you know, if they already have the blowers, it makes the decision a lot easier.
Sure.
Does that sound like a good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. And if we
I'd
just,
like to make a few comments. I think it's a great idea, so I don't disagree. But I'm sort of anticipating if in fact they don't go up north, then we're back with the same question. And I would like to express my view now, which is, as you've heard previously, that I'm in favor of the switch over. Other incorporated villages and towns have done it, not just in Florida, but where I live in Southampton. And the service or company that takes care of my property, it's a four-man show. I mean, it's a small business. I mean, extremely small. And he made the transition and he didn't struggle with it. You know, there was a little complaining initially and then everybody just accepted it. It made a big difference. So I don't see any reason not to do it. I don't see the downside. As Joan mentioned, you know, the reality is that they're going to pass it on to us. All businesses are facing increased costs and making a transition to a device that's less invasive in terms of noise and pollution. I just think there's not a reason not to do it, in my opinion, but.
I think the ones that have done that, they qualify that for residents who want to do their own work. I don't know, we'd have too many of those here, and allowing them to use whatever kind of machine that they want to use. The other thing I'll mention in talking with Palm Beach, they had this kind of like what you were saying. They had a little initial pushback, but he said there's no discussion or about it at all now. It's just a common thing in that town. In fact, they said these companies will rat on other companies that aren't using the battery power.
Self-policing.
So that's
Yeah.
enforcing it. They
Right.
rat on each other.
That's right.
That's good. Sounds like a plan.
All right, so we'll get a little more.
Yeah, we will.
But, and then next month, let's be prepared to give direction
Okay, good.
to the staff.
All right.
Okay?
Paul, can I ask, is the noise appreciably less? I mean, how many blowers? We only have one guy that comes in and one blower. And I just didn't know whether it was gonna make a huge difference if it was electric or gas.
Well, everything's incremental. I mean, obviously it doesn't go away. The noise is still there. But I can tell you that if you're sitting outside, you're still going to hear it. obviously.
It's a different pitch.
But if you're inside with hurricane-proof windows,
I don't hear it anyway.
well, no, I do, and I have good windows. I mean, some of those things are, I mean, the decibels are way beyond we allow in the generators.
But are the electric blowers of a certain decibel, or can you get the big?
Oh, we're gonna have to,
huge decibel?
well, we're gonna have to set some standards.
Yeah.
I mean, there are different,
Those standards are.
well, that's the next step. That's a good question.
Top one now is like 80, if I recall, something like that. But anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was brought up initially as to what
Yeah, I think Mr. Shubin went through the decibel level. And that-
Right,
he's on the tape. I think that was
Right.
probably in November.
right.
We could refer
And
back to that.
we
And
can
that's
have
based
that
on the
information.
power of the
Right.
electric. Yeah.
I can say this in running around out here in the golf cart, on the golf cart. Those things are, the gas powered are as loud as anything, any construction site has going on. It's, albeit it's not all day. I mean, you know, they stop and they're there for 20 minutes and then they're gone, but
To my neighbor.
so, okay.
Well, that's the problem. It's kind of a continuous noise. They go from one
Yeah, right,
property to the next. They're coming at all hours, every day of the week. So,
right.
okay.
Okay,
So we'll be ready next month to make a decision.
all right.
Okay, let's move on
Curtis has
to,
a comment.
I'm sorry, Curtis.
I made a test at our property because we went out and bought an electric blower, and my next door neighbor uses the gas blowers. And so I physically took mine over and compared the noise to his, and they're both loud. They're both loud. However, the electric blowers are quite a bit less loud than, but they're both loud. And you know, we have a fairly high powered electric blower, which is what the lawn guys are gonna need.
Right.
So, and the other question is the number of batteries that they're gonna have to buy, because they're doing 6 or 7 lawns a day. And those batteries will really only last for 1.5 properties. So it depends on who owns the blower. Maybe the homeowner should buy the blower, and therefore, you know, the lawn maintenance guys won't raise everybody's, you know, lawn maintenance fee. But, you know, that's something for you guys to discuss.
You know, that's a good point though, because we use an electric one and the battery runs out when we're trying to blow. It
It
lasts for
lasts so
like half an
long.
hour.
You can do your research.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just that as simple a switch over. Plus, I wonder if they can even get them. It's hard to get anything today.
The batteries,
Well, the blow, I mean,
the phone. I have an electric blower too,
can't get chicken.
just to you.
Yeah, they last forever.
Can I ask if anybody's is going to speak, if you could come up here and use the microphone for the record?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
We're being more casual today. Let's postpone it to next month and we'll all be ready to make our
Okay.
comments. How's that? Okay, let's move on to massing impact.
Okay, yes, Mr. Mayor, our staff has taken your direction and been looking at our codes and ways perhaps that we can address the massing. Reed and myself and Mr. Nazaro. Mr. Nazaro has done most of the detailed homework on it, and so I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Nazaro to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Dunham. So in reviewing the issues that we're trying to address regarding really just massing and sort of looking at a fundamental change of Gulfstream that comes along with that. I took a call from Skip Randolph, and we were talking about some recent applications that came through, whether it was on Old School or Banyan, and the issues that the commission was dealing with. And he said that, you know, in Palm Beach, we have something that they use for this express purpose, and it's whether or not the application is dissimilar to the nearby properties. So one of the things that Gulfstream has built in the code is excessive similarity. So within our architectural plan review levels 1, 2, and 3, there are specific standards that those, whether it's the town manager, the ARPB, or the town commission review. And one of the things is they can be excessively similar. I think we dealt with that within the last few years with a project that was on Polo, and how the structure was very similar to another one that was recently built. So within that, excessive similarity prohibition is proposed structure shall not be excessively similar to any other structure existing or for which a permit has been issued within 250 feet in respect to one or more of the following features of exterior design and appearance: apparently visible, identical front or side elevations, substantially identical size and arrangement of either doors, windows, porticos, or other openings or breaks in elevation, and other significant identical features of design such as, but not limited to, materials, roof line, height, and other design elements. So, I think Mr. Randolph, we talked about a few other things, and I looked at the code relative to dissimilar. And oddly enough, as you can imagine, having a town attorney that works for both Palm Beach and Gulfstream, the similar language that is in our code is identical to the language that's in the town of Palm Beach code, but then they follow up with the similar language with this dissimilar language. And I really feel that it addresses the issues that we're dealing with. So I'm just going to read that to you and propose that we add that underneath what we currently have, prohibiting excessive similarity, also prohibiting dissimilarity. So again, from the Palm Beach code and what I propose, we would just put in, similar to what we have now, is the proposed building or structure is not excessively dissimilar in relation to any other structure existing or for which a permit has been issued, or to any other structure included in the same permit application within 200 feet of the proposed site in respect to one or more of the following features. So then it lists A through H, and the first few certainly speak to the issue that we're dealing with. The first one is height of building or height of roof. So the height of the roof of the application that you're looking at would not be able to be excessively dissimilar from the properties within 200 feet. Other significant design features, including but not limited to materials or quality of architectural design, architectural compatibility, arrangement of the components of the structure, appearance of mass from the street or from any perspective visible to the public or adjoining property owners, diversity of design that is complementary with size and massing of adjacent properties. So really it by its nature addresses size and mass. Design features that will avoid the appearance of mass through improper proportions, and design elements to protect the privacy of neighboring property. So this really takes this concept of like the neighborhood district and really sinks into, let's look at the street view and what this is doing when you drive by relative to the houses that are within 200 feet. So you're really looking at maybe at least 5 houses. So houses on either side across the street and catty corner. That would be something that in the past, and it may have been a few years, just in recalling some of the public records requests from many years ago, I remember hunting for different pictures of different homes that were part of applications. So it'd be, well, I want to see a picture of Mayor Orthwine's house, and it just so happened that it was in an application that her neighbor submitted, because that's what we were doing back years ago. So I would propose that we would include this, and part of the new sort of application procedure would be, we want to see what it looks like, but also what it looks like on the street compared to the neighboring houses. And then we'll be able to maybe more efficiently and effectively counsel at the staff level the applicant in, well, the finished floor elevation is raising at 5 feet, and you want a 2-story house that has a maximum floor area ratio and maximum eave heights on the 2nd story. And you have 2 single-story houses on either side of you that are significantly lower, and it's going to be like a castle up high on a hill. And how we would be able to tell them, well, this is very dissimilar based on the location, where you are, the surrounding properties, and this application of the code. So I feel like that would be a lot easier for not only the staff, but the applicant to understand the impact relative to using these criteria. So that's the first suggestion that I have. And really, I think would really help staff, the ARPB, and the town commission in grappling with this issue as it comes up.
I think it's a great idea.
Can I ask a practical question? Let's apply your concept. So my home is surrounded by the north and south by single-family houses. There'd be 5 of them. And there's one house across the street that's partially second story. So all the rest are 1 story. So what would be the conclusion of what you could build in that section? I assume that'd be 1 story.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be limited to 1 story, but where, again, it'd be up to the commission, the ARPB, to make that recommendation. Staff would certainly counsel them on what's surrounding it, and tend to counsel the architect to design the house so that the massing was respectful of the surrounding properties. So whether that's pushing the 2nd story portion to the rear of the house so it doesn't look as massive, dropping the eave heights, using the architect's ability to design something that's respectful of the location of the house relative to those other properties.
I think it's a good idea, but I agree with Paul. It can be difficult to apply as well. And his example is the perfect one, because you don't want to prohibit 2-story homes. But how do you apply that when in the setting in which he finds his own home, you've got all single-story homes, older ones that are low. So I think in addition to this, I think that's a great addition to the code. I think we need to have more specific guidance as well. And the couple that we talked about previously that I think need to be considered are no special exceptions for 2-story homes. Special exceptions permitted on single-story homes. That is, we're encouraging single-story. We're not prohibiting, but encouraging single as opposed to 2-story homes. Also, I think we need to consider lowering the roof height of 2nd-story homes. And the reason that has to be done is because we're in the finished floor elevation levels, as mandated by the state, the federal government, require us to now raise the finished floor. So you're now putting an additional 2 feet on these new buildings, and it really pushes the roof height up. So I think we should consider lowering the roof height of 2-story homes.
I agree with you. Again, to illustrate a specific example, the house immediately to the south of me, it's 2 feet in the front. It gradually goes to 4 feet in the back. So we're not just necessarily talking 2 feet. It could be 3 feet.
Correct. Based on
more. I mean, that's my point.
The topography that's there as well.
So, and that's a key driver, I think, on roof heights. We have to address that.
And the final one is 2nd-story homes should have a further setback from the street as opposed to single-story homes. Those are the 3 that I think we should think about.
And then Trey, I've got one issue with the 2nd story. I don't know if you can talk to one of our professionals about it, but so when we lower the one issue is when we lower the ceiling height, and you'll get what I'm saying, but sometimes the architects were losing a roof pitch on the 2nd floor. So you're getting, you don't have the correct slope. I mean, it's typically their hip roofs on the 2nd floor. Obviously we don't have 10 roofs, but we have the potential to get a weird slope. So if you can add, I mean,
by lowering the.
Yeah, you're typically looking at, the mayor said basically, and we want a 10-foot ceiling's really what you're getting on the 2nd floor. You're not getting a 14-foot ceiling on the 2nd floor, even though everything's at 35 or below. We have a
That's right.
opportunity to get a weird
Yes.
pitch on the hip.
Don't we have pitch in our code?
We do.
We have a couple of houses where the pitch,
Yeah, question whether,
the pitch might meet code, but it doesn't look that way. And part of it is the massing from the street, which obviously would be set back, but it's just something I don't want to have a law of
no,
unintended
it's a
consequences.
good point. I've always wondered about that pitch too, because a couple homes have gone up where it doesn't look like much of a pitch, but when I questioned it, apparently
Meets
it
the
didn't
code,
meet
but yeah, so I don't know if there's something to remedy that from the streetscape.
On the setbacks, I walked down Polo and Gulf Stream, and there were a couple of houses that had 2 stories, but the setbacks on those houses are very significant. It's almost like right in the middle of the house, and so it's not as imposing to the property than north and south. So I think we need to consider in the circumstance where the surrounding houses are 1 story, a more significant setback.
I think 1 story, I talked about it before, minimizing the setback just to encourage instead of 15 feet, 12 feet, because you're not going to notice that. Most of that older homes in Gulfstream, the setbacks are 10 to 12 feet. They used to be. And also remember, when these people build up new, eventually everything's going to be built up.
Yeah,
So I don't really want to punish people now, because in the future, as people rebuild, everything's going to have to come up. I mean, so it's not like today is forever, because houses come down and new ones go up and everything's going to have to be raised.
no, that's a good point of reducing the setback for single stories
Yeah,
to give them more room.
encourage it.
When I was talking about setback, I mean, obviously on the 2nd floor, and those are
The second floor wedding
Not the
cake.
first floor.
Second floor wedding cake.
Yeah, I don't want it to look like this.
No, but I think you can push, Wheatsmore House, the Hayes House, it's a very handsome house, and it's set back on both sides pretty significantly, and I think that's, in my view, I mean, it's only my opinion, that would work if you could have a 2-story. The one concern I have, and it's been expressed a couple of times, is the notion of reducing the mass as it appears from the street and pushing it to the back of the property. I'm strongly opposed to that. I am strongly opposed, because then you're putting that 2nd story in the back of the property, where in the homes adjacent to me, well, they used to be, it's a new house, but before, half the property was open in the back and they had pools. And so I don't want a 2nd story being pushed back and I have to sit in my patio or whatever and look at the house. I'd rather have it forward. So I'm not in favor of pushing it to the back.
I also think the architectural style of the home has a lot to do with massing. Just like the guest house on A1A, there's the old Spear House. They have a guest house right there, and it's not nearly offensive like the one next door. So it's up to the architect to create a visual non-massing. I don't know how you say that in your code, but it's really, it has a lot to do with the architectural style.
Yes.
What about massing from the water perspective? I mean, we're only talking about the street. I mean, there's structures being built now that are so massive if you're across the intercoastal. How are you allowing for that?
Well, that's what Paul just mentioned. If you have 2 views, one from the street and the other from the rear, aside from water, like in the core, the living area is in the back. That's why you wouldn't want to have that mass pushed to the back.
It's not just affecting.
And what you're pointing at is the view
It's affecting
on the water.
The whole.
And this is where it kind of gets into what we were talking about the last meeting, with a home that technically met code, but doesn't fit within the context of the neighborhood because of the impact on the neighbors not just from the street, but from the waterscape as well. And that's what we're wrestling with, trying to put together something that allows guidance and instruction to the applicant and architect, but also flexibility to the town to adjust the designs. Yes.
Bill Boardman, Polo Drive resident. I think this proposal is fantastic. I think I'm sitting here very, very impressed at what 1 month can bring up. And I think what you propose sounds like it would be a major improvement. And the only question, I think, number one, I think the list that the mayor went through of additional considerations should be an integral part of this. And because that helps with specifics as to how this can be enforced. The other question I had was, is 200 feet enough? 200 feet, really isn't much in a setting like the core. And is it 200 feet from the edge of the property line? Or, I do think if you can broaden it somewhat, it puts it more into a context, and we want just to be the two houses next door. There have to be limits on it, but I would ask you to look at that and just say, what's the practical effect of it? Look around some of our neighborhoods and say, what would it do? You may conclude it should be a little bigger.
And Mr. Boardman, we've had a discussion about that. Is 200 feet enough? And the 200 feet is the Palm Beach
correct
code.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have some discussions about exactly what you're talking about.
Our similarity code is 250, right?
That's correct.
Right.
And
well, I think it's a great starting point. But you raise some good points. There's always the risk of unintended consequences of these changes.
Every time you do, there's something that you miss.
And I just wonder if we couldn't have some more expert analysis suggestions as to, okay, this is what we're thinking of doing. What are the possible pitfalls? What do you foresee adversely occurring from it or positively occurring from it? And I don't know if it's architects or engineers or whatever, but and I would not want to bring anybody in who is routinely coming before the town of Gulfstream.
One thing that we could do, and I remember when I was in Manalapan, I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but I did reach out to the town of Palm Beach Planning and Zoning Department that obviously has been dealing with this code for a long time. Perhaps reach out to them and see if somebody could come speak to us about the impacts that they run into with the code as it's written at 200 feet and other impacts that their code that they run into regularly.
Do any other municipalities have the difference in setbacks, changes in roof heights that we're talking about?
I think we did in Ocean Ridge. I think when I was there, I think we started that.
Right.
Right?
Right, and it's still in, as you know, it's in the flexible
Right.
pushback period. So
Right.
we kind of take it one at a time.
But we did, this was back in 98 to 2003 or whatever, whenever I was there, but we were addressing that back then. I don't know what they say now. But there was a percentage that, over which the second floor couldn't be.
So Joan, what you mentioned was, which was an interesting take of giving value to small, single story, not small, but single story homes by reducing the setback. Would you also increase the setback from the current setbacks for 2-story?
I don't know. I don't know the consequences of that.
Right.
I don't know. I know that single stories are very unoffensive. And when I first moved to town years ago, most of the houses were 10 to 12 foot setbacks. And you could have a whole lot covered and the hedges covered everything up. So it wasn't offensive to anybody. That's why I was trying to encourage people to build the 1-story homes. And even they might take up more of the lot through the setbacks. It's not offensive to anybody.
By the way, just to remind everybody, when the manual was put together, I forget what year, you remember what year?
A long time ago.
Yes.
That year.
We're not going to talk about years.
The Gulfstream core district is characterized by 1-story and a few, I stress, few partial 2-story homes. So, I mean, the core district has moved significantly away from that. And I'm glad we're looking at this. I think we have a very deliberate process to explore everything. And I would throw on the table, I'm not recommending it, but we should look at FAR. And I think of that because in the town I live in the summer, has small lots like us in the village of Southampton. I know you're opposed to it, but I don't agree with your analysis that it leads to a reduction in value. In fact, I think the character is so unique. I believe in location, location, location. So I don't think it necessarily leads to reduced value. They did it in Southampton. I can tell you, people in Southampton don't like to give up money. And it hasn't hurt the values. If anything, it's increased. So I'm just saying we should look at it. I'm not recommending. Everything should be on the table.
Yeah, no, I agree. Everything should be talked about. But yeah, Trey talked about reducing it now might create, I don't know, you brought that up last month, so I listened to it.
No, sure. There was I said that if you reduce it by a certain percentage, there's an argument that it devalues your property. It's across the board. I mean, we would get one attorney that reaches out to a resident and all of a sudden we have, 50 residents all suing us under Burt Harris for the diminution of value that we would have to compensate them for.
Yeah.
So that's a real threat. I mean, the response from the commission was, yeah, but it certainly adds value. This is a unique community. I just don't know how the judge is going to feel about, well, we're, preserving this, Gulfstream and it adds value in the long term. So
I just think Gulfstream has had these codes for years and it's been a percent value. I would try to restrict it more by the new proposal Trey's doing now and architectural style and trying to encourage more single family homes.
I'm inclined to go with you. I just like to list every
But I
option.
think if we
Yeah, I like to
look into
list every
everything.
option and on every option put the pros and cons.
Yeah,
And then, we need some
conversation.
reference to other communities, how they've handled it. And so let me see if I can get you connected with somebody at the village of Southampton, because they were dealing with exactly the same issues. See how they handled it. Not that we have to follow what they did, but I think that's the kind of analysis that we ought to do, because what we decide in the next 2 or 3 months is going to
It's going to tell us whether it reads,
the core district is characterized by 2-story large.
Do you know what, though? I think it's important to try to get some of this. I don't know if this is not to jump into something, but add the dissimilar to the code right away and work on the rest, because this other thing is going to take more time.
Right.
And I think as long as we establish dissimilar, we're starting a good foot. I mean, I don't want to drag that out to go research all this, to do more studies. I think adding that right now is a good thing. I mean, it's only my opinion.
And
Anybody agree?
Similarity.
Start.
We'll get that zoning in progress.
Time is of the essence.
That's a great suggestion.
No, I mean, the rest of it we can battle out later, but this is I think it's a really good addition.
You have to consider the shape of the lots too. I mean, if you have a long, narrow lot and you're pushing it back, you still have area in the back to work with. And you're talking about if it's a second story home that not using special exceptions, so they can't, go too near the end. But if you look at Blue Water Cove, where the lots are pretty square and not deep, and we did special exceptions there so they could put a pool in back. So they
Production of a pool setback.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's why I said this is simple. And to get it done, because there's a lot of other things to deal with, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot to consider.
So go down 2 paths.
Get this done.
Yeah.
And then
So are you ready for first reading?
Please.
I hope you stay with that second half though, because I think it's really important. And I get a little nervous when I start hearing about Harris legislation. I think we've been down this road before over the years, and if we're going to have litigation, we're going to have litigation. We can't run our lives worried about it. I have real questions in my mind, be interested in opinion about whether Harris really applies to the valid exercise of the police power through zoning. In other words, does a law like we're talking about on the similarity, that's a regular zoning stat ordinance. And so I think we got to be really careful about that. And Joan, I would say on value, you can kind of argue value any way you want, but you could say we're going to lose property value if Polo Drive looks like Brooklyn Heights,
No, I agree.
So,
Yeah.
it's not,
Well, that's why the dissimilar thing is coming into play.
yeah.
I think
Oh, I
that's
know.
the most important thing we can do right now.
Yeah.
Quickly.
It's a wonderful initial action. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it won't stop there. We're going to continue to look at the points that have been raised. I remember when we adjusted the FAR, and it was almost like throwing a dart at a board. So I'd like to see how our FAR compares to other municipalities of our similar size.
Greg, when you talk to the planning and zoning up in Palm Beach, it seems simple, but this thing seems to be angling towards a survey like we used to do in historic districts.
Mhm.
I mean, most people sitting up here and most of the town staff has a working knowledge of who, what, when, where, why by lot. We don't have that many houses here, and then it's updated periodically.
Mhm.
And when the applicant comes in, they're like, oh, here's our lot. You pull out the book, look it up.
Right.
It's going to have some changes per jump because things get torn down every year. But and you're like, okay, well, you got this, and this on the street. I mean, obviously, you all know that just by looking at it, but it seems to me this is sort of angling towards some sort of survey that's updated periodically, at least in the core. I mean, Plaza Soleil can have its own similar issues, and obviously the larger lots and down south are a little bit different. But to spook the bottom, I mean, it's not immediate, but.
Sure. Okay.
It adds streetscapes too on that.
Well, yeah. 6 o'clock.
That's, yeah, so because that adds a lot of charm to everything is this, the
Absolutely.
landscaping, the streetscapes, the
Absolutely.
huge trees that we have.
Yep.
I mean, they're beautiful and they just add value to especially the core.
When Plaza Soleil, it's a different look. It's an open, more open yard.
Mhm.
And it's got that open feel to it.
Well, the pavement on their streets is 24 feet wide.
It's wide. Because they're bigger, they don't have the hedging that you have in the core here. And as this changes, as you start getting larger and larger homes, it's really going to get very noticeable there. So I think this is equally important to Plaza Soleil as it is to the core. Just coming in at from a different angle.
I mean, you're right. When you drive over there, I mean, you could have 3 or 4 big 2-story houses in a row, and it still seems wide open. You know, so.
All right, so we have some direction. We're going to move forward with the ordinance change that
Relative to dissimilar, yes, sir.
relative to dissimilarity. So get that moved. And then Greg's going to follow up with Southampton, with Palm Beach. We'll get some more information there.
And when I was in Manalapan, I think I've shared this with you before, we were talking about FARs. You imagine Manalapan worrying about FARs, some of the houses over there. But so we did have Palm Beach come in to explain how they determine their FARs. And by the time they left, none of us understood it. So it's very complicated, but I'll reach out to FAR with respect to these.
Yeah.
This part of the code.
Before we move on, Mayor, I have just 2 small things. I'll start with the really, really easy one. Within the code, you have different levels of review. You have your level 1, which is the town manager, level 2, which is the ARPB, and level 3, which is the commission. Currently, that is delineated very clearly in section 66-141. Level 1 review, I just want to make an adjustment. It will kick more things up to the ARPB. Which will allow the appointed body of the town to review these projects. So currently, the language that we have an issue with, and that a lot of the residents have an issue with, when we tell them this is a significant project, we want the ARPB to see it, they say, well, look at the code, that's incorrect. And there's a little bit of a disconnect between what we know the commission and the ARPB wants to see and what the resident wants to just kind of fast track and get automatic approval the same day. So projects requiring level 1 architectural site plan review includes changes in exterior wall, roofing, window, door, mailboxes, awning, or column material, which are significantly different in color, texture, or appearance than the existing materials. So we don't like that you can significantly change all of those things and just be a level 1. So my recommendation, it would just be to add which are not significantly different in color, texture, or appearance. That way it's very clear that it's a significant change. We want the ARPB to see it, not just the town manager to sign off. And I believe that that's consistent with what our residents want and what our ARPB wants to see, because when we approve a project on a level 1, everyone wants to know, well, how did that happen? And we don't want that. We want the residents to be able to understand it's a significant change. You have to go to a level 2. So if I could just ask that I get the sign off on moving that so we can get the ARPB to see more of these significant projects.
It's a concern to you and to staff,
Sure.
so it's something we should do.
We battle with that all the time. And we are, the code allows us to kick it up to the ARPB, but the applicants don't understand why we're doing that because of the language. And we would rather the boards to handle those significant changes.
It's basically a major facade renovation.
Exactly. It makes the house look totally different. So.
I find it interesting that residents are taking issue with your suggestions and decisions. When we first moved to this town, you didn't question staff decisions. You challenged them and read through the code.
It's a quite different population right now. So.
Times have changed.
Times have changed.
Yeah, we certainly have.
So, okay. I think we're all in agreement that we should do that. Was there another point?
Yes, Mayor. The other thing was I went through the various special exceptions within the code, and I believe there are very few that really warrant prohibition of 2-story homes. A lot of them are relative to lot size. Like if you have a really small lot, you can still build up to a 2,500 square foot house, things like that, which really don't have wide applicability. And I don't think would really achieve the objective of encouraging single-story homes. There are really 1 or 2 special exceptions that would really warrant that prohibition of application to 2 stories. And I can certainly go through them. We could wait, and I can provide the commission with a memo next month. We could discuss them now, whatever you prefer, but just looking through the code, I feel like we would be losing a lot of beneficial flexibility for our residents that wouldn't really achieve the objective that we're looking for relative to first promoting the building of single-story homes.
I think if you could do a memo on that for our review next time.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else want to comment on that topic before we move on? All right, very good. We'll bring it up again.
Once you have a plan approved.
Yeah, I guess you're supposed to come up.
Thank you. Once you have your plans approved, you have the ability to revise them. What criteria is associated with the revision? Are you required to have elevations for the revision? Are you required to show landscaping for the revision? Or is that a technique then to get away with building what you want to build, but not telling you guys up front?
A revision for what?
So for example, there's a fire pit that I'm particularly speaking about, which was supposed to be at grade, and now it's like 5 or 6 feet above grade. I mean, it's huge. And there's no elevation. And I came over to look for one, and there's no landscaping plan. So, what is that going to look like? It's impacting the entire cove.
So I can explain that.
Yeah.
They did. We cannot find a revision. They had a change in staff, and Rebecca's done a forensic search for any kind of a revised plan. We were told by the new construction manager for that site that it was at Delray. Well, it's not at Delray, and so so they have to provide all of the working details of this new this elevated fire pit, in addition to landscaping. And so we're right in the middle of that right now, trying to get that.
It's seating in addition, so it's way up above anybody else's patio. It's way up above anybody else's back area.
Yeah, and so, and as I mentioned to you yesterday, that yard that you're looking at is going to be about 3 feet higher than it is now. So the appearance of it includes a foundation and the wall, which the owner admits they want to take down lower. So you're going to be having about 3 feet of dirt that's going to come up on the side of that wall.
Do we still have time to have input in what they end up building there, or is it a done deal?
Well, I mean, the structure will meet the town's codes. We just need the documents that a revision would require. And so,
which would include landscaping, like
oh yeah,
soften the impact.
oh absolutely. I mean, this, yeah, it's like a building out there, and so it's going to need to include landscaping. So we're right in the middle of that right now. So.
All right, good. Let's move on. ARPB meeting is January 27th, 30 a.m. this month for anyone who wishes to attend. Finance report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, your report represents 1/4 of the budget at this point in time. There's really nothing significant in it that unless Mrs. White has found something or anybody else.
Anyone else scoured this balance sheet and come up with
so
all right.
I would ask for you to approve this.
We'll accept that as submitted. Chief?
I request that the report be accepted as submitted. I do have an incident that occurred 2 nights ago. I wanted to, would like to bring everybody up to date on. The incident occurred on Middle Road. I really don't want to give people's names, but occurred on Middle Road about 4:30 in the morning. The victim, female victim, sleeping, heard someone banging on her front door. She didn't go to the door, which was smart. She called 911 immediately. As the call went out, actually, one of our officers was already over on the other side of the waterway, had a medical call. So that's one officer here on this side. Delray instantly sent us 4 cars, police cars up here because it come in as a possible burglary in progress. As the officer was heading to the general area, he observed a vehicle going east on Middle Road. He stopped the vehicle. When he stopped the vehicle, he approached the vehicle. The guy driving the vehicle was completely naked. The car stopped in the roadway. It didn't stop on her property. And that's where it created an issue for us for as far as how to deal with him. He was apparently, appears he probably was on some kind of designer drug. We found out later that morning, we got a call from a resident of Gulfview Drive on 543 Gulfview. And he was looking at his video cameras and seeing the guy walk around his house. And then the guy went back to the pool, stripped down and jumped in the pool and went for a swim. And of course, he didn't want to pursue it at all or nothing. He wasn't, that concerned. Appears as though most likely it's definitely probably the same guy. We can't prove that because there's no one that can identify him. The first victim heard her banging on the door, but she didn't see the guy, couldn't identify him. We showed her his photo of his driver's license and everything, and she couldn't identify him. Never seen him before or anything. So it seems like the question going around is that, or phrase going around is that the police just let the guy go. Well, he did. He was let go in the long term. However, he was also checked out by every means we could possibly check him out, and anything we could do. Couldn't charge him with trespassing because in the state of Florida, first of all, he was on public property parked in his car when we stopped him. He wasn't on private property. If he's on private property and you want to charge him with trespassing, you first have to give him a warning and give him the option to leave the property. If he refuses to leave, then you could arrest him. So
You drug test him?
Yeah,
You drug test him?
we have no means to drug test people.
He's naked and.
He was swimming.
Was he wet?
Imagine that.
I mean, it's probably.
Sounds familiar.
Well, we say he was obviously coming down off his eye because he was coherent. He said he liked to drive around naked in his car and look at real estate. He was a real estate investor.
That's not illegal.
I mean, to let him continue to drive in a car.
Well, the officers did do the field sobriety testing on him to ensure.
Yeah,
well, yeah, that was the first thing they required him to do was
Get him out, take a
dress.
photo, then take that photo.
Anyway, yeah, we did everything possible we could, and believe me, officers dealing with someone like that wouldn't like anything more than to arrest somebody like that, So, but sometimes our hands are tied, and we have to go by what the state law says. And I don't imagine he'll come back.
Thank you for telling us
Thank
that,
you.
because the first thing
Made your
people
day,
say
huh?
is,
Right.
"But please let him go. Why?"
Exactly.
And at least everybody knows, you have to work around what's legal.
Right,
But that's the first thing out of people's mouth.
of
Well,
course.
please let him go.
So,
Well, thanks, Chief.
So thank you
Thanks.
for clarifying all that.
Now let's move on to the Baxter Woodman core area improvements agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This contract proposal here with Baxter Woodman represents the following services: client workshop meetings, data collection, preliminary design, final design, permitting, bidding, services during construction, and resident project representative services. So this is basically the soup to nuts for the design and permitting for the next major capital improvement project that we are going to do. You'll notice in here it's got a schedule and it's got a breakdown of the hours dedicated to each one of these services. I do have Rebecca Travis here today. And Rebecca, could you go up there? I'm not going to ask her to go into the details of all of this. There are a couple of things I would like for her to cover. as you can see, we're doing the entire core in one project, but it's actually going to be in 2 phases. So I'd kind of like for her to explain that to you so you'll know how that will work. And then if you have any questions about the one section that we worked on quite a bit, just discussed at the commission level for our last major project, was the services during construction section. And so we'll kind of touch on that for you a little. And then I'd like for her to address her social media opportunities that they now have for residents to be able to ask questions, follow the progress of the construction. And I'd like for her to just kind of touch on that.
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
Hi,
hi. Rebecca Travis, Baxter and Woodman. As Mr. Dunham mentioned, the project is for the core area, Sea Road down to Gulfview, and then Polo Drive and Lakeview, or excuse me, Gulfstream areas. The intent is to do roadway drainage and water main improvements on those streets. We're going to do it in a 2-phase manner. The west being basically Polo and the streets west of that to the intercoastal, and then the balance being Gulfstream over to A1A. Right. The intent for that is so that during construction we can have a north-south route available and open without restriction. So the first phase will be the western area where Polo and those streets to the west will be torn up, not necessarily all at once, but as you go along, leaving Gulfstream as the north-south primary route for drivers. And then we'll flip and then have Polo open for construction with the Gulfstream work. Then the intent is to, after we have both sections done, we'll do a final lift of asphalt for the whole project so that when the big construction vehicles are on the first lift of asphalt, they can kind of chew that up. And then when we're done and ready to do the whole, we'll asphalt the whole project all at once and do the striping. We're starting the design work by next week. We've got the surveyor out there. You'll see pickup trucks. They should have the name on the side of it. So it's Ritzel Mason is the surveyor. If you see them, they will be parked in the street periodically. Then we'll be working on the design and then go into permitting and bidding. We anticipate right now the start of construction, the start of the contractor being out in the field will be the summer of 2023. So we're looking a little bit more than a year from now, starting construction. That'll be phase 1, then we'll move immediately into phase 2. And then we anticipate they'll finish construction in early 2025. So we have about an 18-month construction period. Again, it's not going to be the whole area torn up all at once. They're going to be limited to first the west side, and then as they work, they'll be, you won't have open trenches. You won't, at the end of the day, you won't have your driveway obstructed. Mail will be able to get in and deliveries and all that. The contractor will be required to leave everything accessible. As Greg mentioned, we anticipate establishing a project dedicated link that'll be on the town's website so that people, if you're up north and you're not in town and you want to know what's going on, you can click on the link and we'll have, diagrams of the project limits and the schedule and where we're at during design. Then when we move into construction, we typically update it, maybe even daily, but typically weekly, and put construction photos, and we'll say, okay, this week we're going to be in front of these houses, or, so, and then anybody that wants to, we'll put a email and a phone line link to call my office or Mr. Dunham, whoever you feel you want to talk with. And we man that phone. So everybody, like I said, if you're up north, you kind of, wonder what's going on. You can check it out without, you don't even necessarily have to call. We'll keep it updated. And then during construction, I guess you wanted me to talk about a little bit about staffing during construction from our office. So once the construction starts, we typically have the engineer still involved for design questions. Then we have a construction manager who typically handles the in-office paperwork, reviewing the construction contract, the pay applications from the contractor, looking at shop drawings, running the monthly progress meetings. And then we have a field inspector that is, in our contract, we have him for on average 25 hours a week, in anticipation that Anthony is helping to cover the construction. There's going to be times when we'll all, Anthony will be out there along with our inspector, depending on if some problem comes up and we need everybody to meet. But that's kind of how we're planning to staff the project.
Right. If you remember the last project that we had, this construction, the project representative services was for 40 hours a week. And so we reduced that to 25 to try to save some money on the contract. And what we found out was that Mr. Beltran, who worked for Tamarack in the water department, very familiar with the construction of this type of project, and was very helpful when their inspector was not available. I mean, I would pick up the phone and call Ron. By the way, it's all the same characters from that project to this one in terms of the engineers and the inspectors. And he might not be available. And so Anthony actually was able to go out there and observe some things that the contractor might have been trying to skim on, if lack of a better way to describe it. And so it was very helpful in doing that when Ron wasn't available.
And also our inspector is only going to be on the site when there's work to be observed. So typically at the beginning of the first month of when the contractor's getting started, he's doing shop drawings, he's getting his schedule put together, his maintenance of traffic plan approved, and he doesn't actually send equipment out maybe for the first month. So our inspector's not going to be just standing out there charging the job. He's going to be out there when he's needed. That's why I say it's an average of 25 hours a week. Some weeks he might be out there the whole week, and then other weeks there may be clean at the end of the job, they're cleaning up and doing stuff that the inspector can look at a later time when kind of a combined review. So it's just an average of
the process,
whatever need to cover
really
it.
Works well.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I forgot to mention too is we also included in this contract the expansion of the lake on the golf course, so that we will be coordinating during the design and the construction with representatives of the golf course. And our intention is that our design and the contractor for the town will be excavating the lake and then putting down some, grassing the slopes. But that the golf course, we anticipate they're going to want to redesign to the extent it's required, the hole, the layout of the hole. I don't anticipate that we're going to touch any greens, but they might want to run the golf path somewhere differently or adjust.
Where is that in the project? Is that the beginning or the end? Where does the golf course portion come in?
The construction of it is in phase 1. So,
okay. So it'd be done early on.
Right.
Yes.
If there's any questions of Rebecca, I just have one more comment to make.
Sure.
Any questions of?
I have just a
Rebecca?
question on the contract. I think I understand it. On page 19, it lists the tasks and the cost, and there's a term lump sum. So is that just a fixed amount? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. And then ones that are not to exceed is if you need less hours, then you charge us less.
Correct.
But if you need more hours, you don't charge us anymore.
Yes. Yeah, so like on the field verification up towards the top there under data collection, that's anticipating locating, doing soft digs where they locate existing utilities so we can make sure we're not in conflict with the new design. So we kind of have a general idea what number of conflicts we might need to excavate. And if we need less, then we're not going to charge you that. Yeah, the inspection was again, if he needs to be out there, he's going to be out there. If he's not, we're not going to send him out there just to stand around. And then reimbursable expenses that, printing postage mileage, and we provide a backup for that. So if we don't use it, we don't bill it. I think we've had other contracts where we never billed out the reimbursables. Just finish the job up.
Thank you, Rebecca, unless there's any other question. I would like to say that the total cost of this project is spread out over 3 budget periods, correct? No, not evenly, but so this one sum is not going to be impact just the next budget period. It's over, you say 4 budget periods?
It's actually 4 fiscal.
Okay.
Starting this one and then moving through fiscal year 25. I mean.
Yeah.
Right, so about halfway in.
Very good. Yes.
I'm Guppy Craft. Greg, I wanted to ask you, is County Road and Little Club Road not included in this because is there a reason? There's no drainage issue on County? I know Little Club's private.
Yeah, the Little Club is a private road.
But that drain, it feeds into the town pump station, I thought. I thought the drain on Little Club Road was tied in somehow to Gulf Street. I mean, I was down there, we did leave our car at the top of the hill. The water was up to here on Tuesday night. You cannot get, Little Club Road's impassable when it rains, in a heavy rain.
I mean, I don't, they made some improvements to their drainage system over there, the La Casitas and the Little Club.
We did our own, and ours is working. Our drainage system in front of the casitas is functioning. But the drain on Little Club Road that feeds into the town pump, I thought.
I believe that drains into your, or to the Little Club's lakes.
Yes.
Doesn't drain into
That
the.
has nothing to do with
No.
the town.
The catch
Correct.
basin and
Because it is
the catch basin just south of Hillside House is that
totally insufficient.
that pipe goes across the Little Club property underneath to the pond
Right.
off of number 9. That's right.
So that's,
The pump's
That's
empty.
impressive.
And so they cleaned it out. That was cleaned out. But there's no formal, but it's a makeshift catch basin. Now that pipe was cleaned about 3 years ago.
What is that? I mean, it is, the road is impassable.
it's not the town's.
It's not the town.
It's kind of like near the tennis
But
courts.
I will say this, when we were doing, on our first project, the pipe was replaced.
Right, the water pipe.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Because the other one had totally collapsed.
Yeah, the main is done for the
Yeah.
water work, but the drainage is, that's a little
I
close.
start C Road down to Gulf here, it's like, well, where's County Road and Little Club Road? into this, and thank you for getting us
Right.
done first.
Yeah. County Road really drains down to right here. Right?
But it's not gonna get any drainage. Is that what you're saying?
No.
It doesn't need it. It just goes downhill.
Well, I didn't, it goes the other way too. I didn't know whether they were having any problems on the flats by the tennis courts.
No, I think that drains to the west off of County Road down onto the golf course.
What's the proposed duration of this project, and is there a remedy if it's double the amount of time or triple as the undergrounding was?
I think you identified the time period.
Yes, to
Yeah, so
18 months.
we're starting the design now, Monday. We anticipate being done with the design about a year from now. Then we go out to bid for the construction contract, and that usually takes 2 or 3 months to advertise, to get the bids in, and then have them approved and awarded at commission. So we're looking at starting phase 1 construction in the summer of 2023, and then 18 months. So then we're looking for construction, phase 1 and 2 being done in early 2025.
And to answer your question, the last project that involved, as I said, the same characters, not necessarily the contractor, but the people that will inspect and keep this going are the same ones. And that project finished on time.
The contract will also have built-in
Right, penalties.
time being of the essence, and financial penalties for not finishing on time, as opposed to like Comcast and AT&T, where we have no control over.
Now, the undergrounding involved unregulated utilities, monopolies without oversight from the state or any other agency. So you have, outside of lawsuit, which we did file against AT&T, you have no remedy, whereas in a private contract, you do.
Right, and we own the improvements. So these are our contractors and our improvements that we own. We're not relying on, as the mayor said, these other entities.
Okay. Any other questions for Rebecca? If not, we have a motion regarding the consulting agreement with Baxter Woodman.
Motion to approve the consulting agreement for the core area improvements, phase 1 and phase 2 as presented.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. And also the town manager and I will be sending out a letter to the town, and we will include information on this for the residents, so they have a general idea of what's coming and when it will begin. Any other comments, questions? If not, thank you for coming.
I'm gonna be that guy when I'm 80.
Longer than I
They're like,
thought.
where is that now?
Yes.
We don't have any more plans on this.
Well, I remember back in 20,